Highway 19 stretched empty under the storm. 11:47 at night. Rain hammered the asphalt, wind screamed through the pines. Then she appeared, a 7-year-old girl, barefoot, running through the downpour. Small feet left bloody prints on wet pavement. Muddy clothes clung to her thin frame. Hair plastered against her face, eyes swollen from crying. She waved frantically at the approaching patrol car, breath coming in ragged gasps. The car slowed. She collapsed, knees hitting pavement hard. "Please," she sobbed. "Help my mama." He tied her up. Sheriff Davis stepped out. Beside him stood Max, a black German shepherd with alert eyes. When Lily saw them, she jerked backward. A dark bruise marked her cheek. Would she trust them enough to lead them home? Before we continue, hit like and subscribe. Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing where our stories reach. 6 hours earlier, the old wooden house sat deep in the pine forest, 8 miles from town. Jessica stood in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The overhead light flickered yellow, casting shadows across the walls. Wind whistled through window cracks, and the radio crackled with storm warnings. Lily sat in the corner with her doll, watching her mother with worried eyes. Jessica glanced at the door, then sighed and turned off her phone. 5th time that hour. Someone kept calling. Outside, an engine roared in the distance. The sound tore through the silence like a blade. Jessica's hands began to tremble. Jessica was not weak. She was a nurse, 32 years old, who had survived plenty of hard times. But 3 months ago, she made a choice that changed everything. Tyler came back into her life, fresh out of prison, promising he had changed. He begged for a chance to start over. Jessica said yes because Lily needed a father figure. That was the mistake. In recent weeks, Tyler drank more, came home later, talked about debts. Jessica packed a suitcase in secret, planning to leave. But Tyler found out. Tonight, when he walked through that door, his eyes were different. Cold. Desperate. Tyler stumbled inside, reeking of whiskey. His hands shook, jaw clenched tight. His eyes were hollow, not cruel, but drowning. He was not a monster by nature, just a man being pulled under. 2 days ago, his bookie told him the truth. $85,000. That was what he owed. Pay within 48 hours, or they would kill him. Tyler thought Jessica had savings. She did not. Only $3,200, every cent meant for Lily's education. "Give me the money," Tyler said, his voice cracking. Jessica shook her head. "That's for Lily. You're not taking it." His face twisted. "You don't understand what they'll do to me." He shoved her. Jessica stumbled backward, her head striking the kitchen cabinet. Blood dripped down her forehead. Lily screamed and ran to her mother. Tyler stood frozen, staring at his own hands. He had not meant to do that, but it was done. He grabbed electrical cord from the garage and tied Jessica to the chair. Tape covered her mouth. Lily cried out, but Tyler dragged her to the bedroom and locked the door. Then he pulled out his phone. "I have something valuable. Maybe we can trade." He planned to use Jessica as collateral. 4 hours until they arrived. Lily sat on the floor of her bedroom, listening to her mother's muffled cries through the thin door. She was 7 years old, but she had learned to grow up fast. This was the 3rd time she had seen Tyler hurt her mother. She remembered what Jessica had told her once. "If something bad happens, find a police officer. They will help us." Lily waited. She heard Tyler's footsteps go down the stairs to the basement where he kept his beer. She moved quickly, unlocking the window and pushing it open. The frame was narrow, and the drop was 8 feet. She squeezed through and let herself fall. Pain shot up her ankle when she landed, but she did not stop. Rain soaked her immediately. She had no shoes, no jacket, just her thin pajamas. She ran onto the dirt road, her feet slipping in the mud, rocks cutting into her soles. 8 miles to town. Too far for a child, but she had no choice. Each step felt like her lungs would collapse. In her mind, one thought repeated, "I have to save Mama." After 2 hours, she saw headlights in the distance. Hope flickered. Would it be enough? Would there be time? Sheriff Davis had spent 26 years protecting Pine Ridge. Tonight was supposed to be his last patrol before retirement. He wanted it quiet, uneventful. Just 12 hours, and then he could go home to his wife and finally rest. But when he saw the little girl collapse in front of his cruiser, barefoot and bleeding in the storm, he knew rest would have to wait. Beside him sat Max, a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois with a black coat and sharp, intelligent eyes. Max had been Davis's partner for 3 years. 2 years ago, Max saved his life when a gunman cornered Davis in an alley. Max took the bullet in his shoulder, but never let go until backup arrived. Davis considered Max family. Pine Ridge was small, 2,400 people scattered across miles of dense forest. The town had one main road, a few churches, a grocery store. 90% of the county was wilderness. The distance from the station to the outer forest could take 20 minutes on a good day. Tonight, with fallen trees and flooded roads, it could take much longer. Davis picked up his radio and tried calling for backup. Static hissed through the speaker. The storm had knocked out the signal towers. He was alone. No one was coming to help. Just him, Max, and this terrified little girl. He thought about Tyler. 5 years ago, Davis had arrested him for armed robbery at a convenience store. Tyler was not evil then, just reckless and desperate. Davis had hoped prison would straighten him out. When Tyler got out, Davis warned Jessica to stay away. She did not listen. She believed people could change. Davis looked down at Lily, shivering in the passenger seat. Her lips were turning blue, her feet were torn open, and her eyes held a terror no child should ever know. He turned the key in the ignition. Whatever was waiting at that house, they were going in alone. Davis dropped to one knee in front of Lily, meeting her at eye level. He unbuttoned his police jacket and draped it over her trembling shoulders. "You're safe now, sweetheart," he said, his voice steady. But Lily pulled back, her eyes locked on Max. The dog sat perfectly still beside Davis, ears up and tail motionless. Lily's breathing quickened. She covered her face with her hands. A defensive reflex that told Davis everything. This child had been threatened before. Davis understood. He kept his voice soft. "His name is Max. He's a hero, just like you." Lily peeked through her fingers but said nothing. "Max won't hurt you. He's here to protect you and your mama. That's his job." Lily lowered her hand slowly, studying Max with cautious eyes. The dog did not move. He simply watched her with dark, patient eyes that seemed to understand her fear. Davis rested his hand on Max's head. "You can touch him if you want. He's very gentle." Lily hesitated. Her hand trembled as she stretched it forward. Max leaned his head slightly toward her, and when her fingers brushed against his fur, he stayed perfectly still. Then Max licked her palm gently. For the first time that night, Lily smiled. It was fragile, barely there, but real. "He likes me," she whispered. Davis nodded. "He loves you, and he's going to help us save your mama." The moment broke when Lily started crying again, this time not from fear, but from relief. Davis let her cry. When she finally caught her breath, he asked the questions he needed answered. "Lily, does Tyler have a gun?" She nodded. "A black one, in his belt." "How many people are in the house?" "Just Tyler and Mama." "How many doors?" "Front door, back door, through the kitchen." Davis processed the layout quickly. He stood and opened the back door of the cruiser. "You're going to sit in the car with the heater on. Max and I will bring your mama back." But Lily grabbed his sleeve, her small fingers digging into the fabric. "No, I have to go with you. She needs me." Davis hesitated. Bringing a child into a hostage situation violated every rule. But when he looked into Lily's eyes, he saw determination that could not be broken. "Okay," he said, "but you stay behind me. Always. Understand?" Lily nodded hard. Davis started the engine. Max jumped into the back seat, and Lily climbed in beside him. The cruiser pulled onto the dark road, headlights cutting through rain. But neither of them knew that back at the house, Tyler's phone had just buzzed. "We're 15 minutes out. Have her ready." The clock was ticking faster than they realized. The forest road twisted through the pines, narrow and slick with mud. Tree branches bent low under the storm's weight, scraping the cruiser's roof. Davis gripped the wheel with one hand and pressed the radio button with the other, trying again for backup. Nothing but static hissed back. They were alone. In the back seat, Lily sat pressed against Max. His warmth calmed her. "Sheriff Davis," she said quietly, "are you scared?" Davis glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Sometimes. But being scared doesn't mean we stop helping people." Lily thought about that. "Mama says being brave means doing the right thing, even when you're scared. Your mama is very wise." They drove in silence. Then Lily asked, "What if we're too late?" Davis kept his eyes on the road. "We won't be. I promise you, Lily. We will bring her home." Max suddenly lifted his head, body going rigid. His nostrils flared, and the fur along his spine rose. Davis noticed immediately. Max only reacted like that when danger was close. Davis killed the headlights and slowed to a crawl. 200 yards from the house now. "Lily," Davis said, his tone harder. More focused. "I need you to be very quiet now. Can you do that?" Lily nodded. Davis pulled off the main road onto a narrow trail into the trees. He parked behind thick pines and turned off the engine. He pulled out his bulletproof vest, strapping it on. He checked his sidearm. Max was already at the door, waiting. Davis looked back at Lily. "When we get close, you'll stay behind that oak tree. Don't move until I say it's safe. If you hear go, run to the car and lock the doors. Understand?" Lily gripped his hand. "But what about you and Max?" "We'll be fine. This is what we do." They stepped out into the storm. Lily walked between Davis and Max. Davis whispered, "Track mode, boy. Find Jessica." Max lowered his nose and began moving forward. Through the trees, they saw yellow light from the kitchen window. A shadow moved inside. Then Max froze. His ears flattened, and a low growl rumbled deep in his chest. Davis's hand moved to his gun. Max had detected something. Not just Tyler. There were others. 2 silhouettes moved toward the house, hands carrying something that glinted. They were already here. Davis held up his fist, the signal to stop. Lily froze behind him, her hand clutching the back of his vest. Max dropped low to the ground, his body coiled. Through the rain-soaked darkness, they watched 2 men approach the front porch. One was tall and broad-shouldered, moving with confidence. The other was thinner, nervous, his head jerking left and right. Davis pulled out his night vision scope. The tall one had a pistol. The thin one carried a duffel bag that sagged with weight. Through the kitchen window, Davis could see Jessica still tied to the chair, her head hanging forward, alive, but barely conscious. Tyler paced in front of her, phone pressed to his ear. This was worse than Davis had thought. Tyler had invited predators into his home, and now he was trapped with them. Davis recognized the tall man, Vince, an enforcer for Big Eddie's gambling operation. Assault, extortion, weapons charges on his file. He was not someone who negotiated. Davis turned to Lily and guided her behind the oak tree 30 feet from the house. He knelt and gripped her shoulders firmly. "You stay here. No matter what you hear, you do not move. Do you understand me?" Lily's eyes were wide with fear, but she nodded. "What if something bad happens?" she whispered. Davis looked her straight in the eye. Then you run to the car, lock the doors, and wait. But nothing bad is going to happen. I promise. He stood and motioned to Max. The dog moved silently to his side. Davis whispered, "Track. Back door." Max lowered his nose and began circling toward the rear of the house, moving like a ghost. Davis crept toward the side window, staying low. He could hear voices, muffled but angry. Vince's voice boomed through the door. "Open up, Tyler! We had a deal!" Tyler's response was panicked. "I need more time. Please, just one more day." The sound of a fist pounding on wood echoed through the night. "You're out of time." Inside, Jessica lifted her head. Her eyes were swollen, and dried blood crusted along her temple, but she was awake. She strained against the ropes binding her wrists. She tried to scream through the tape, but only a muffled groan came out. Tyler turned to her, his face pale. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. I didn't know what else to do. The front door creaked open. Vince stepped inside, water dripping from his jacket. Behind him came Marcus, the thin man with the duffel bag. Marcus's eyes darted around the room before landing on Jessica. He grinned, a cold expression that made Tyler's stomach turn. Well, Vince said, his voice smooth and dangerous. "This is your collateral." Tyler nodded, unable to meet Jessica's eyes. Vince walked over to her and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up. Jessica jerked her head away, but Vince only laughed. "She'll do. But you still owe us 85 grand, Tyler. You think one woman covers that?" Tyler's hands shook. "I thought we could work something out. Maybe I could work for you, pay it off over time." Vince released Jessica and turned to Tyler. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about money anymore. This is about respect. You made Big Eddie look weak. So now, we make an example." Marcus unzipped the duffel bag and pulled out chain and plastic sheeting. Jessica's eyes went wide. She thrashed in the chair, legs scraping against the floor. Tyler stepped back, his face draining of color. "Wait, what are you doing? You said if I brought you something valuable, we'd be even." Vince smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We lied." Outside, Max reached the back door. His nose pressed against the wood, and he could smell fear and danger. His lips curled back, exposing his teeth. A low growl rumbled in his chest. At the side window, Davis saw everything. He saw Marcus pulling out the chain. He saw Jessica's terror. He saw Tyler realizing too late what he had done. Davis reached for his radio one more time. Static. He was still alone. Then he heard it. A scream from the back of the house. "What the hell is back there?" Marcus shouted. Max was no longer waiting. The back door flew open, and a third man stumbled out into the rain. A man Davis had not seen before. He was stocky, with a shaved head and a bleeding hand that he clutched to his chest. "There's a dog," he shouted. "There's a damn dog out here." Max stood 10 feet away, his body low, his eyes locked on the man. His fur bristled along his spine, and his teeth bared in a snarl that promised violence. The man, Derek, reached for the gun tucked into the back of his jeans. Davis did not hesitate. He broke from cover, sprinting toward the front door. "Police! Drop your weapons!" he shouted, his service pistol drawn and aimed. Inside, Vince spun around, his hand going for his gun. Marcus grabbed Jessica's chair and yanked it backward, using her as a shield. Tyler stood frozen in the middle of the room, his eyes darting between Davis and the criminals, his brain struggling to process what was happening. "Let her go," Davis commanded, his voice hard and unwavering. Vince laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "You're alone, old man. One cop, one gun, and 3 of us. Do the math." At the back door, Derek raised his pistol toward Max. Max did not flinch. He waited, muscles coiled, for the moment to strike. Derek's finger moved to the trigger. Time slowed. Then Derek fired. The gunshot cracked through the storm like thunder, but Max was already moving, a blur of black fur and raw power, launching himself through the air. The battle had begun. The bullet missed. Derek's hand shook, and Max was already in the air. 80 pounds of trained muscle and teeth collided with Derek's chest, slamming him backward into the muddy ground. The gun flew from his hand and disappeared into the darkness. Max's jaws locked onto Derek's forearm. Derek screamed in pain. Inside the house, Davis moved fast. He kicked the front door fully open and swept his pistol across the room. "Hands up, now!" Vince spun toward him, reaching for his weapon. Davis fired once. The shot hit the wall inches from Vince's head, deliberate and precise. "Next one goes through your skull," Davis said, his voice cold as iron. Vince froze, his hand hovering near his waistband. Marcus still held Jessica's chair, using her as a shield. His free hand fumbled for something in his pocket. Davis shifted his aim. "Don't." Marcus stopped. His eyes darted to the back door, where Derek's screams continued to echo. "What's happening out there?" Davis did not answer. He took a step forward, his gun trained on Marcus's head. "Let her go." Slowly. Marcus hesitated, then shoved the chair forward. Jessica tipped sideways, the chair legs scraping loudly before crashing to the floor. She hit the ground hard. Tyler, who had been frozen in shock, suddenly lunged forward. He grabbed the knife from the kitchen counter and dropped to his knees beside Jessica, sawing frantically at the ropes around her wrists. "What are you doing?" Vince snarled. Tyler did not look up. His hands shook, but he kept cutting. I'm done with all of this." Davis kicked Tyler's gun from his belt, sending it skittering across the floor into the corner. The rope snapped. Jessica ripped the tape from her mouth and gasped for air, her lungs burning. Tyler moved to her ankles, slicing through the cord there too. Outside, Derek tried to shake Max off, slamming his hand against the dog's ribs. Max did not let go. His training had drilled this into him. Hold, control, neutralize. Derek's strength faded with every second, the pain overwhelming. Finally, his body went limp and he stopped fighting. Max released his arm but stayed on top of him, teeth bared, daring him to move again. Inside, Davis kept his gun on Vince. "On your knees, hands behind your head." Marcus complied, his bravado collapsing. Vince glared at Davis, but slowly raised his hands. "You just made a big mistake, Sheriff. Do you know who we work for?" "I know exactly who you work for," Davis said. "Big Eddie. And when he hears his boys got arrested trying to kill a woman and a cop, he's going to throw you under the bus." Vince's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Davis pulled out his cuffs and moved toward Marcus first, snapping the metal around his wrists. Then he turned to Vince. "Your turn." But before Davis could cuff him, Vince's eyes shifted to the window. His expression changed. "Too late, Sheriff," he said quietly. "He's already here." Davis's blood went cold. He turned toward the window just as headlights cut through the rain. A black SUV rolled to a stop in front of the house. The engine idled, and the driver's door opened. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, flanked by 2 more armed men. Big Eddie had arrived. Davis's mind raced. This was no longer a rescue. This was a siege. Big Eddie did not come to negotiate. He came to clean up loose ends, and that meant everyone in this house was a liability. Davis, Jessica, Tyler, even Lily hiding outside. They were all witnesses now. Davis grabbed his radio again. Static. He cursed under his breath and moved to the window, positioning himself where he could see without being an easy target. Big Eddie stood by his SUV, unbothered by the rain, his silver hair slicked back, his hands tucked casually into his pockets. He was 50-something, lean and composed, with the kind of calm that came from decades of getting away with violence. One of his men, a younger guy with a buzz cut and tactical vest, held an AR-15. The other carried a shotgun. Jessica crawled toward the corner of the room, her body still weak. Tyler helped her, his face pale with guilt. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. Jessica looked at him, her expression unreadable. She did not forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But right now, survival mattered more than anger. Davis turned to Max, who had just pushed through the back door, Derek's blood still on his muzzle. The dog moved to Davis's side, his body tense, ready. Outside, Big Eddie took a step forward and called out, his voice cutting through the storm. "Sheriff Davis, I believe we have some business to discuss." But what Eddie did not know was that 30 feet away, hidden behind an oak tree, a 7-year-old girl had just made a decision. Lily was not going to let them hurt her mother again. Davis stepped onto the porch, his gun holstered, but his hand resting on it. Max stood beside him, a silent warning on 4 legs. The rain poured off the roof in sheets. Big Eddie stood 20 feet away, dry under a black umbrella. His face was calm, almost bored. "Sheriff," Eddie said smoothly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. My associates were here on legitimate business, a debt collection. Nothing more." Davis did not blink. Legitimate business doesn't involve tying up women and bringing chains. Eddie tilted his head slightly. "That does sound unfortunate. Perhaps my men got carried away. I'll make sure they're disciplined." His tone was casual. "But here's what's going to happen. You're going to let my men go. We're all going to walk away. And we'll forget this ever happened." Davis's jaw tightened. "They're under arrest for kidnapping and attempted murder. They're not going anywhere." Eddie's smile faded. "You're alone, Sheriff. No backup. No witnesses who'll testify. And you're retiring next week. Why ruin a good career over this?" He took a step forward. "Be smart." Davis opened his mouth to respond, but then he heard it. Engines. Not one, but many. Headlights cut through the darkness from the main road. 1 vehicle, then 2, then 5, then 10. Pickup trucks, sedans, old station wagons. They rolled to a stop in a semicircle around the house, surrounding Big Eddie's SUV. Doors opened. People stepped out. Farmers, teachers, store owners, mechanics, Pine Ridge residents. 50, 60, 70 people, standing in the rain with flashlights, baseball bats, and tire irons. They did not have guns, but they had something more powerful. Unity. Big Eddie's expression shifted, confidence draining from his face. His bodyguards raised their weapons, but even they hesitated. There were too many. An old man with gray hair stepped forward. His name was Joe, and 20 years ago Davis had pulled him from a burning house. "Eddie," Joe said, his voice strong, "you don't belong here. These are our people, our town. You can leave now, or you can try to fight 70 of us. Your choice." Eddie looked around, calculating. His men were good, but not good enough to take on a crowd. And if a single shot was fired, it would turn into a massacre that the FBI would not ignore. He had survived this long by knowing when to retreat. He lowered his umbrella and stepped back toward his SUV. "This isn't over, Sheriff," he said quietly. Davis did not move. "Yes, it is. Go home, Eddie." Big Eddie climbed into his SUV. His men followed, weapons lowered. The engine roared to life, and the vehicle pulled away, disappearing into the storm. The crowd remained until the taillights vanished. Then, slowly, they began to clap. It started with Joe, then spread through the group, building into a wave of relief and triumph. Max sat at Davis's feet, his eyes still trained on the road, his body tense. Even in victory, he did not let his guard down. 2 hours later, backup finally arrived. 3 patrol cars and an ambulance pulled up to the house. The radio towers had been repaired, and the moment Davis's signal went through, every available officer in the county mobilized. The paramedics rushed to Jessica first, checking her vitals and cleaning the wound on her forehead. She was dehydrated and bruised, but stable. They wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and helped her into the ambulance. Vince, Marcus, and Derek were loaded into separate patrol cars, all three handcuffed, and read their rights. Vince glared at Davis as the door closed, but said nothing. Marcus looked sick, his face pale. Derek had to be carried on a stretcher, his arm bandaged and splinted, his face twisted in pain. The charges would be severe: kidnapping, assault, attempted murder, conspiracy. Combined, they were looking at 30 to 50 years. Big Eddie, though he had left the scene, was not off the hook. The events of that night triggered a federal investigation into his gambling operation. Within 2 weeks, the FBI raided his headquarters and seized records linking him to money laundering, extortion, and racketeering. Big Eddie was arrested and charged with crimes that would keep him locked away for the rest of his life. As for Tyler, he sat in the back of a patrol car, head in his hands. He had not been cuffed yet. Davis stood outside the car. Tyler had made terrible choices. He had hurt Jessica, endangered Lily, and invited criminals. But at the end, he had chosen differently. He cut the ropes. He stood between Jessica and the men who wanted to kill her. Davis opened the door. "Tyler, you're going to be charged. False imprisonment, child endangerment, assault. That's probably 3 to 5 years. Tyler nodded, his eyes red. "I deserve more," he said, his voice broken. Davis sighed. "Maybe. But the DA will see what you did at the end. You helped her. You stood up to Eddie. That counts for something." Tyler looked up. "Will Jessica ever forgive me?" Davis paused. "That's her choice. But redemption starts with forgiving yourself." He closed the door gently and walked away. Jessica sat in the ambulance, an IV in her arm. Lily climbed in beside her, and Jessica pulled her daughter close, holding her so tightly it hurt. "You saved me," Jessica whispered, her voice shaking. "You ran 8 miles in a storm. You're so brave, baby, so brave." Lily buried her face in her mother's shoulder. "I couldn't let him hurt you anymore, Mama. I just couldn't." The ambulance doors closed, and the vehicle pulled away. Davis watched them go, his chest tight with emotion. This moment, this rescue, would be the one he remembered most. He turned and walked back to his cruiser. Max jumped into the passenger seat, panting but alert. Davis scratched behind the dog's ears. "Good boy," he said softly. "You're the real hero tonight." The next morning, at the Pine Ridge Sheriff's Station, Davis's retirement ceremony went ahead as planned. The room was packed with officers, city officials, and residents. Flowers lined the tables, and a banner hung across the wall. "Thank you, Sheriff Davis, 26 years of service." But Davis barely noticed. His eyes kept drifting to the door, hoping to see Jessica and Lily. Then they arrived. 1 month passed. Jessica and Lily moved into a small apartment in town, close to the school. The old house in the woods held too many dark memories. Jessica sold it and used the money to start fresh. She returned to work at the hospital, but only part-time. The rest of her hours were spent in therapy, learning to process the trauma. Lily attended counseling sessions designed for children. She still had nightmares about that night, waking up screaming for her mother. The darkness frightened her. Loud noises made her flinch. But slowly, with help, she began to heal. The thing that helped her most wasn't the therapy. It was Max. Every Saturday, Davis brought Max to their apartment. Lily and Max would run together in the park. Max was patient and gentle, as if he understood that Lily needed peace more than play. Jessica watched from a bench, a soft smile on her face. "She talks about him every night," Jessica told Davis one afternoon. "She says Max is her guardian angel." Davis scratched Max behind the ears. "Maybe he is." Lily approached them, slightly out of breath, her eyes bright. "Sheriff Davis, can we do something special for Max, to thank him?" 2 weeks later, Lily organized an event at the town park. With Jessica's help, she made posters that read, Meet Max the hero dog, and hung them around Pine Ridge. On Saturday morning, 50 children gathered at the park. Max wore a flower collar that Lily had made herself, and his tail wagged non-stop as the children lined up to pet him and take pictures. Lily stood on a small wooden platform and told her story. She spoke about the storm, about running 8 miles alone, about finding Davis and Max. Max didn't just save my mama, she said. He saved me too. He taught me that even when we're scared, we can still be brave. Afterward, Jessica, Lily, and Davis planted a young oak tree in the center of the park. A small plaque was placed beside it. In honor of Max, guardian, hero, friend. Lily poured water over the roots. This tree will grow strong, just like you, Max. The story spread. Local news stations picked it up first. 7-year-old girl and K9 save mother from criminals. Then state outlets covered it. Within weeks, it went national. Social media exploded with the hashtag #MaxTheHero. People from across the country sent messages of support and donations addressed to Lily and Max. The Pine Ridge community established a fund called Lily's Hope, dedicated to helping victims of domestic violence. In 3 months, they raised $150,000. Jessica became the spokesperson, sharing her story to give other women courage to leave dangerous situations. 6 months after that night, the governor traveled to Pine Ridge to present Max with the state's Medal of Valor in Service. It was the first time in the state's history that a K9 had received the honor. The ceremony took place at the Capitol building, and Lily stood beside Max on the stage, her hand resting on his head. Other police departments across the state expanded their K9 programs. Adoption rates for rescue dogs increased by 300%. Schools introduced a curriculum called Courage Like Lily, teaching children how to seek help in emergencies. Davis stood in the back of the crowd, tears in his eyes. I trained him to protect, he said quietly, but he taught me what it means to be a hero. 1 year later, Lily was 8 years old. Every Saturday, she still visited Max. She had grown taller, her smile came easier, and the nightmares had faded. Jessica was stronger too, working full-time and volunteering at the domestic violence shelter. Lily had learned that surviving did not mean forgetting. It meant growing. On a quiet afternoon, they sat together in the park under the oak tree they had planted. Max rested his head on Lily's lap. I used to be scared of everything, Lily said softly. But now I know that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing, even when you are. Jessica smiled and pulled her daughter close. Max's tail wagged slowly. Remember Lily. Remember Max. Remember that courage, loyalty, and love can turn a nightmare into a miracle. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this story to spread hope.